Well, the drama continues in Minneapolis, Minnesota, the haven of communists in America, apparently. And I got to tell you, so I just posted something on TikTok, and I never use TikTok. I just decided to post it there because it was an appropriate style of video for TikTok. And I'm going to repeat what I said. And TikTok gave me a strike on my account and took it down. This is what I said. You mean to tell me that when an ICE agent kills a trained professional agitator and protester in an act of self-defense, the left and Democrats immediately call for the defunding of ICE and its complete dismantling? But when a criminal illegal alien rapes and bludgeons to death an unarmed female nursing student in Georgia who was simply out enjoying a jog, the same left and Democrat Party continue to call for and champion open borders? That's what I said. And TikTok removed the video. So much for that. You know, there's only so much appetite out there on these apps for the truth. And, you know, things like that just make me so frustrated with this protection of TikTok and everything else. Why are we fighting to, keep TikTok when this is what they do? So anyway, look, I want to start by expressing, I think, some frustration that maybe many of you are feeling as well. And it has to do with the fact that Trump has engaged in negotiations with officials, Democrat officials in the state of Minnesota, the mayor, Frey, Governor Walz. You know, Trump reported he had a very good phone call, and that's Trump's style. He always does that. And in many ways, you know, he's always damned if he does and damned if he doesn't. I'll offer a caveat in a second because I think there's more to this picture and what's going on. So first off, my frustration is that, you know, if we can't beat the left domestically at home, what does it matter if Donald Trump defeats them abroad? And, you know, look, we've seen Donald Trump fight like hell. You know, against the globalists. We just saw, and I talked about in the last episode, you know, what a tremendous performance he gave on the stage in Davos, Switzerland, at the World Economic Forum. I mean, he just took it to the left. And he seems to be extracting, you know, much of what he wants as it relates to Greenland and acquiring Greenland, or at least part of it. So that's ongoing. He's continuing to fight hard for Greenland. You have the commie Prime Minister of Canada that weeks ago announced that he was going to side with the communist Chinese, our sworn enemy. And this is the crux of our problem with Canada. Canada, this doesn't mean there aren't decent citizens in Canada. I feel for many of them, the ones that aren't Marxists supporting this. But the Canadian government is anti-American. If you're going to side with the communist Chinese, you are declaring yourself an enemy of the United States. And so this Prime Minister, Mark Carney, that's exactly what he's been up to in Canada. We're not the ones disrupting that relationship. He is. If you're going to go and cozy up to the communist Chinese who want to supplant us, who are our greatest enemy and the greatest threat to the world, frankly, right now, we're not going to play nice with you. And so he threatened to slap 100% tariffs on Canada, and Carney's come back, and actually I'll play for you a news report of what happened. Listen to this.
So now President Trump over the weekend threatening massive tariffs on Canada. The president posting this: if Canada makes a deal with China, it will immediately be hit with a 100% tariff against all Canadian goods and products coming into the USA. Now, the Canadian Prime Minister, Carney, now pushing back, saying this on Sunday: we have no intention of doing that with China or any other non-market economy. What we have done with China is to rectify some issues that developed in the last couple of years. So where does this stand?
So there you go. I mean, Carney is trying to backpedal a little bit. Now, this is not resolved right now, and I don't think it's going to be totally resolved because Carney is dug in. I mean, he's an entrenched communist himself, and he's going to side with the communist Chinese. And so Trump's got to use whatever force and power he can and leverage to try and correct that as best he can. So my point is, you've got Donald Trump just bashing, as he should, the left around the world. And then yet when it comes to, domestic issues, like we're seeing right now in Minneapolis, he seems to be extending some sort of olive branch. And I mean, that is something that's frustrating, immensely frustrating. And I've got some ideas about what he's up to, but there's just, my gut tells me, folks, and you can hold me to this, we will find out in the coming days. My gut tells me that Trump has something up his sleeve, that he is not going to cave to the left-wing terrorists that run the state of Minnesota. But there are a lot of things happening right now, and we know that Donald Trump is very good at feinting. And you've got a couple things at play right now. One, you've got a bill that passed the House that's now headed to the Senate that is going to fund ICE. And Democrats are coming out and they're saying, we're not going to fund ICE anymore because of the havoc that Donald Trump's ICE has brought about in Minneapolis. And of course, that's a bunch of baloney. It's propaganda. The only reason this conflict has erupted in Minneapolis is because the Democrats in that state want it to happen. And I've got a crazy expose here from Fox News that I'm going to read through some of it with you in a minute that explains just how coordinated this effort is in Minneapolis to do this. And I have an article out at American Thinker today that explains to people how what we're seeing play out in Minneapolis right now is straight out of Saul Alinsky's Rules for Radicals. Saul Alinsky, a community organizer, a hero of Hillary Clinton, he sought to, in his own words, foment revolution in the United States of America. He was a Marxist. And so his playbook explains the process by which you can create that revolution in the United States. And it's a three-step process. The first step is to create a crisis. And you've got to do that because you have to find a way to motivate your indoctrinated communist supporters to get out in the street. And Minneapolis created this crisis because, look, there are more deportations by far happening in other states, and you don't have any conflict whatsoever. And that's because in those states, the authorities, the police, et cetera, are cooperating with ICE, and you don't have Democrat politicians who are telling people to go out and get in the faces of ICE and interrupt their operations. Nor do you have elaborate, highly funded organizations that are training people to engage in this type of illegal activity. So that's the first thing. Minneapolis created this crisis. And part of creating that crisis was they wanted to create martyrs. And, I got to tell you, one of the principal questions, central questions I try to address in my book, For Christ and Country, The Martyrdom of Charlie Kirk, I think people think it's a biography. It's not a biography. It's an examination of how we got to this point where someone like Charlie Kirk could be assassinated, and then leftists throughout this country on TV who went to your high school, who are online right now, some of them even watching the show, celebrated Charlie Kirk's death, which is the kind of behavior we saw from Muslims in the Middle East when they were dancing and handing out candy when thousands of Americans were slaughtered on 9/11. The war on terror has simply come home. We didn't defeat the ideology. We sat here and watched as it was adopted by the Democrat Party, and that's what we see today. And so the next step after creating the crisis, of course, is you blame your opponent and you isolate and freeze a target. You personalize it. And so that's why you have these Democrats nonstop out there calling ICE agents Nazis and fascists, the Gestapo, the SS. They are the face of evil. And so when they get a Renee Good, they send her out there with a bomb vest, basically, like the jihadists do. And that's what the Democrat Party is today, a bunch of jihadists The radical left is a jihadist movement and ideology, absolutely. They seek complete domination. There is no compromise with them. They are the, they believe in moral relativism to suit their cause. They don't really have any morality, but they, if you disagree with them, then you are a de facto monster. And we saw this start in 2016 when Hillary Clinton went to a fundraiser in New York, and she told the room that half of Donald Trump's supporters belonged in the basket of deplorables. And it wasn't long after she made that statement that the left ramped it up further. We weren't just deplorables. We were Nazis. We were fascists. Trump was Mussolini. And so it's this steady dehumanization that they engage in. And it's why we got to the point that Charlie Kirk was assassinated. And it's why we're here today in Minneapolis with what's happening. And just to make my point clear, the Democrats don't care what the truthful narrative is. They need Democrat activists who are being trained to go out and get themselves killed. They're sending them to their deaths. And the left doesn't care that it puts the ICE agents' lives in danger. And they also don't care if the ICE agents have acted in a defensible manner in self-defense. Listen to the Minneapolis police chief admit it.
Greater issue is, even if there is an investigation that ultimately proves that at the time of the shooting it was legally justified, I don't think that even matters at this point, because there is so much outrage and concern around what is happening in the city.
That's right. So there is the Marxist Saul Alinsky playbook. Create a crisis and then emotionally personalize it. So he says it won't matter to people in the city if the ICE agents are in the right every single time. The emotions are already riding high. And so where does that lead us? To the third step, which is to present a solution. Now, they're not open to multiple solutions. The left already has a pre-existing solution, which is their overarching objective, which is to stop deportations completely, to defund ICE. And that's what they're presenting. Listen to this.
This agency has gone completely rogue. ICE needs to be abolished. It cannot be reformed, and Kristi Noem must be impeached. And as the
It's not ICE that's gone rogue. ICE hasn't gone rogue at all. ICE is doing what it's supposed to do, which is apprehend illegal aliens, most of whom are not only criminals by virtue of being here illegally, but they have rap sheets that include murder and rape and sodomy, etc. The people who are out of control are the Democrat activists. Now, I actually want to go ahead and go through some of this information. Now, first off, Alex Pretty, whatever his name is, he got himself killed. And, there's a picture that's come out. Now, look, I'm going to get into some criticism too. Kristi Noem has come out and said some just stupid things, that weren't helpful. And they weren't even necessary to talk about, which is, look, the guy had a brand new Sig Sauer and a bunch of ammunition when he was engaged in a fight with ICE agents. Now, I don't know about you, but if I go with the intention of getting involved in a physical brawl with ICE, and that's what he did. He intended to get in a physical brawl. I got the receipts here in just a second. If I were to go out and wanted to get in a physical brawl with cops or ICE agents, federal agents, I would not go brandishing a Sig Sauer pistol. You have to be a lunatic to be wanting to do that. That's why I'm saying these people are, bomb-strapped jihadists going out, sacrificing themselves for the left. It's sick. The left is getting their own people killed. Democrats are getting their own supporters killed. And they're so brainwashed. Listen to this. Now, look. Do I have this clip even? I don't have it up. But anyway, there's one clip in Minneapolis of one of these protesters going in front of ICE and saying, shoot me in the mother effing face, shoot me in the mother effing. These people are not rational. They are mentally ill. They're mentally ill. And I just want you to listen to the type of insane rhetoric coming from people on the left. Listen to Jake Tapper, who has this leftist in Minneapolis on CNN. Listen to what he says.
I understand that, but they take people to Fort Snelling here, which literally was built as a concentration camp, and Alligator Alcatraz, which I think we can all agree is a concentration camp. Not saying they're Dachau. I'm not saying they're putting people in ovens yet, but these are concentration camps.
Okay.
I don't need to argue with you about that.
Yeah, Jake Tapper. The guy just said that, ICE agents are getting ready to send, people to gas chambers. Detention facilities are concentration camps. These people are absolutely nuts. Now, I just want to break for a second because I've got my favorite, left-wing people that always tune into the show, and I thank you for that. One of these days, maybe something will get through, and you'll have two brain cells that grow so that, something can spark inside your brain. But, here I am talking about all these important issues in the country, facts, and you get Gummy Pokey that says, your eyes are frightening. We just live in a totally unserious country with some of the people that, I don't know. I wonder if Gummy Face or whatever has a family. Do you have kids? Are you responsible for anybody? Do you want death and despair in this country? I don't, and that's why I sit here and do this. But let me give you some background on Alex Preddy. So, this wasn't his first altercation with ICE agents. He was already known to the feds, and he apparently had his rib broken in an anti-ICE protest a week before he was killed by Border Patrol. So he got into a violent confrontation with agents a week before Border Patrol agents killed him in Minneapolis, according to a report. So Preddy, you've heard, is an ICU nurse. Oh, an ICU nurse. He takes care of people, so he can't be a lunatic. Wrong. So he told a pal he saw ICE agents chasing what he described as a family on foot and stopped his car during the earlier incident around a week before he was shot. He said he pulled over in his car and began shouting and blowing on a whistle, at which point he was tackled by 5 agents. And his friend went on TV, I believe, on CNN and said that day he thought he was going to die, adding that Preddy had been released by agents. What kind of nut job do you have to be to do this multiple times? And notice each time it results in physical contact with this guy who lost his life, chasing this illusion that he's been fed by the domestic terrorist party, the Democrat Party in America. It's just unreal. And again, the response is not, hey, get out of the way and let ICE do their jobs. It's, no, let's double down. Let me get into the far left network that helped get Alex Preddy killed. So, ICE and Border Patrol agents were there, by the way, to arrest an illegal immigrant criminal. Preddy and others were there. They were outside a donut shop to meet them as part of a strategic pattern of organized interference with law enforcement operations. Now, this was highly, highly coordinated. Over the following hours, a national network of socialist, communist, and Marxist-Leninist cells in the United States leveraged the tragic fatality into a nationwide protest operation. Now, I'm going to explain to you, using this article, how this happened and how they're doing this. It's engineered chaos, to my point. It's Saul Alinsky's rules for radicals in action. So the encrypted signal messages in real time show that anti-ICE rapid responders were actively tracking, broadcasting, and summoning backup around federal agents outside Glam Doll Donuts on Nicollet Avenue where the shooting happened. Local rapid responders made at least 26 entries into a database called Minnesota Ice Plates in the critical hours before and after the killing, documenting the license plate numbers and details of alleged ICE vehicles they claim to see around Nicollet. This is insane. You have a bunch of radicals in Minnesota and Minneapolis who have nothing better to do than go out and tail ICE agents and write down their license plate numbers and report to one another on these signal chats how many they see. This is like a paramilitary operation. The entry at row 344 read, "At the Nicollet murder," chronicling a black Jeep Wagoneer at the location with agents allegedly involved in the shooting. Row 338 had a Glam Doll Donuts entry tracking a black Ford Taurus. At 9:50 a.m. Eastern, just before the killing, a user identified as Willow shared a 22-second video on an encrypted signal chat for anti-ICE rapid responders. 22nd and 3rd, wrote Willow, quickly following up with "outside Glam Doll." Unreal. 3 minutes later at 9:53 a.m. Eastern, a second signal user, Salacious B. Crumb, escalated the alert, summoning additional responders and citing the same vehicle and agents. Backup needed at the Black Forest Inn parking lot on Nicollet Avenue, just south of 26th Street. This is a mob. These people are seeking mob justice. And I would encourage you, when you get finished listening to this show, go and read, it's very short, Abraham Lincoln's address, Lyceum address. He's speaking to a young club, the Lyceum group. This is about 20 years before he's president. He's a state senator at the time. And we know that the Civil War did come. And in this Lyceum address, he talks about this mob spirit consuming the nation. And at that time, of course, he's referring to mobs going out and lynching black people, etc. Others, too, it wasn't just blacks. But they were asserting themselves as the law enforcement throughout America at the time. And he was very clear where that would lead. And sure enough, it did lead to a civil war. When this wild spirit consumes people and they start to act like this. This is what we're seeing in Minneapolis, and it's part of the playbook. So anyway, this signal chat is traveling around the country. People in New York are getting it. People in Minneapolis are getting it. And, you know, ICE agents are going to apprehend criminals. And you've got a network of thousands of people that are tracking ICE with the express purpose of preventing them and getting in their way. I'm sorry, if you do that, you might die. You can't do it. And so Kash Patel is saying they're going to go and look into these people and these networks. They already are. And I'm just saying, look, you know, President Trump, like I said, I believe he's got a plan. I believe he wants to make sure that this media story dissolves right now so that we can focus again on the criminal activity in Minneapolis, not just from the protesters, but from Walz and from the mayor and from all those involved in participating and looking the other way, allowing the historic fraud that took place in that state. I think that we need to get this bill through the Senate that funds ICE. And so there are a lot of calculations that are going through his mind that we are not necessarily privy to. And I cannot for a second believe that Donald Trump doesn't understand the threat that he faces and we face, because nobody's gone through it worse than him with these people. But this has to be put down. We're sitting here waiting for the Insurrection Act. I mean, look, here's the thing. I mean, you can't negotiate with these Democrats. I told you the playbook. We know what they're doing. And we know that they effectively are trying to create a, hostage situation. And, we, the American people, are their hostages constantly. You can't negotiate with people like that. And as much as he treats the globalists around the world as a threat and talks about them, that pressure has to be maintained and kept up on the left. I mean, we've got a choice to face, folks. And I don't know why so many on the right are so apprehensive about having an honest conversation. I thought it would happen after Charlie Kirk's assassination. I thought that finally there would be a national reckoning. Because look, you've got, as I mentioned, Hillary Clinton, deplorables. Then we get to Nazis and fascists. We got Rand Paul's ribs broken by a neighbor. You've got 2018 under Trump's first administration, his press secretary, Sarah Huckabee Sanders. I don't know if you remember this story. She was in Lexington, Virginia, and she was in a restaurant called the Red Hen. And the co-owner of the restaurant recognized her and booted her from the restaurant, refused her service simply because she worked for the Trump administration. So political differences for the left are no longer differences to be debated. We have to be hunted down. We have to be segregated from society, from polite society, and even killed. And whatever you think about who killed Charlie Kirk, it is undeniable that the left celebrated his death. How do we get to a place in a country where an entire political party can act like that? That's the point of the book, For Christ and Country, The Martyrdom of Charlie Kirk. And, this book was censored, by the way, for a month on Amazon. You still can't buy it at Barnes & Noble. You can get it at Target, Walmart online. Bookshop.org carries it online and other places. But Amazon now has stopped censoring the book. For a month, it was censored. And I make the point. Because, look, the left has no problem at all. The left has no problem whatsoever calling us Nazis and fascists, and we see that that's getting us targeted and killed. It's dangerous rhetoric that is leading to actual real world violence. And do they ever stop and look in the mirror and self-reflect and say, hey, maybe we need to lower the temperature in this country because of what's happened? No, they never do it. They double down. And so while the left is completely comfortable continuing to call us Nazis and fascists and dehumanize us, we seem unwilling to talk about and label the left as they are. The left has no problem labeling us. We need to label the left. And it's not hyperbole. It's not escalatory. It's honest. And if we're not going to have an honest conversation about the issues in this country and what the left has devolved into and what their ideology represents, we are not going to make it out of this. And so I've got a chapter in the book. 9/10 is the new 9/11. And that is explain to people the similarities between the radical jihadists, the Islamic terrorists, and their ideology, which does everything, of course, in the name of a higher cause for Allah, and the left who does it in the name of progress. After 9/11, seeing the jubilation in the Middle East by Muslims who were celebrating our pain, and then 9/10, Charlie Kirk's assassination, and looking around me and people I went to high school with were doing the exact same thing. People were reenacting his death. People on national television, the cable news shows, CNN, MS Now, etc. They were justifying his death. Well, can't be surprised this happened the way Charlie Kirk talked, he didn't support transgenderism. His words were violence, they said, and then once an actual act of violence took his life, that was reasonable. So we've got to talk about this as a country. We cannot let the left get away with this anymore and not be held accountable. I'm sick of it. I got 2 young girls. I don't want them growing up in a country like that. I don't want to grow up in a country like that. I'm sick of it. They don't have the moral high ground, and we keep ceding it to them. All these emotional stories they're feeding related to Minneapolis. Stop buying the false premise. These protesters are out of control. They're going to get themselves killed. And unfortunately, it's just reality. ICE agents are American citizens putting their lives in harm's way to do what they are asked to do and what the law requires them to do. And meanwhile, you have a lawless bunch of mobsters, malcontents in Minneapolis with nothing better to do than go pick fights with ICE agents and stop them from doing their jobs. And I'll return to what I said earlier in the beginning of this show that got me kicked off of TikTok. The same left and Democrat Party that calls for the dismantling and defunding of ICE after a paid protester, trained protester is killed by ICE agents doing their jobs. This is the same left and Democrat Party that after an unarmed female nursing student in Georgia, Laken Riley I'm talking about, is out enjoying a jog, and she is hunted, raped, bludgeoned to death by an illegal criminal alien that Joe Biden not only let into this country, but actually flew with the taxpayer money from New York to Georgia. And the left and the same Democrat Party that wants to abolish ICE continues to support an open border that brought about that rape and murder of Laken Riley to begin with. Make it make sense. You can't. There is no logic on the left anymore. It's gone. You know, and I played clips on the last show and recently of Barack Obama, of the Clintons, all saying the exact same thing that Donald Trump is saying today, having the same position that I have right now. That, look, it doesn't matter. And Barack Obama says this in 2010. He addresses the people, the left right now that's so radicalized. He addresses them and says, look, you know, a lot of people have concerns. These people are just trying to make a better life, but, you know, we can't do this. We can't incentivize people to come here. You know, the law is these people are here illegal and we have to deport them. And that's what we have to. That's Barack Obama saying that. And now you got Barack Obama putting up a letter, you know, that is encouraging people to draw inspiration and support and to support. He says every American should support and draw inspiration from the wave of peaceful protests in Minneapolis and other parts of the country. Speak out against injustice, protect our basic freedoms, and hold our government accountable? What is he talking about? Which Barack Obama is this? These protesters need to be held accountable. And some of them are being held accountable with their lives, and that's sad. But, you know, the lesson, if you're a leftist, is you're going to get your ass shot and killed doing this. And for what? Don't be stupid. So anyway, I'll finish up with this in just a second. But first, I saw that gold hit a record high today. And on that note, what do three billionaires, four major banks, and a legendary 72-year-old investor have in common? They're all making the same shocking prediction that gold is headed for $10,000 or more. It keeps going up. It's getting closer. Goldman Sachs says gold will surge 20%. JP Morgan says 25%. And one respected economist now believes the U.S. government could deliberately raise gold's official price to help pay off the national debt. We'll see. And the world's wealthiest players, they're already making their move. And now you can see, thanks to our friends at American Alternative Assets, you can see what they're seeing for free. They just released a powerful new report. It's called The Surprising Case for $10,000 Gold. And it breaks down all these hidden signals, the central bank gold buying spree, and how smart Americans are protecting their retirement with gold right now. You can go to cloutgold.com to download it free or call 855-803-GOLD. Cloutgold.com or 855-803-GOLD. Don't wait. The window is closing fast. So let's just kind of come full circle here about the frustration, what's going on, what Trump is doing abroad. You know, first off, I there's a lot of drama because Kristi Noem she's not the best person for the job. Now, I don't want to hand the left some victory in canner necessarily, but apparently reports are that she doesn't get along with Tom Homan, who's just a bulldog. And Tom Homan is the best person. Tom Homan should be doing her job. Or maybe not, because Tom Homan has more flexibility with his position as the border czar, that he can go out and do this stuff. But, Tom Homan's the one who was sent in to negotiate, allegedly, with the terrorist Democrat regime in Minneapolis and in the state of Minnesota, not Kristi Noem. And Kristi Noem, she tried to frame Peretti as some domestic terrorist planning a mass casualty event. And look, politics is an ugly game. You got to deal with the media all the time that is against you, that lies to people, and you just got to play it smarter. And, Kash Patel, he made a mistake too. He went on TV and said you can't bring guns to protests. You definitely can bring guns to protests. Now, I don't want to get into this because I think it's a distraction from the serious issue. This is part of the reason we have the discussion. You got to focus on what matters. I mean, should this guy have brought, a Sig Sauer, to a protest? No, he's a lunatic for doing it. But the broader problem is you have a highly financed organization throughout the country, but especially in Minneapolis, that is staging events to support their ongoing war against ICE. And that needs to be put down. These ICE agents are putting their lives on the line, and they're doing a dangerous job going after people who are murderers, who are rapists. And these people are getting in the way, and they're putting themselves at risk. And nobody ever talks about the side of just your American citizen who works for ICE, who is out there on the streets, already concerned because you're going after people who have these criminal records. And while you're trying to apprehend somebody, you've got to worry about protesters closing in on you, following you down the street, writing down your license plate, and now we know communicating in signal chats where you are. And by the way, you think that the illegal aliens, you think that they're not going to be able to access now these signal chats too? I mean, it's just, this is crazy to me. And if it's not crazy to you, you are insane. So you've got a U.S. carrier strike group that's arrived in the Middle East. Trump says Iran wants a deal. So he continues to put the pressure on Iran. The Abraham Lincoln strike group, which consists of the carrier and then 3 guided missile destroyers, well, it's entered the Central Command region of the Middle East, which includes Iran. And this group, I mean, he's bringing in the big guns: FA-18 Super Hornets, Growlers, F-35 Sea Jets, helicopters. And so he's serious. And I just think Trump needs to think about this and address this before it gets ahead of him and it's too late, that many Americans, Mr. President, are seeing the news right now of you having phone calls that you're saying are good conversations with the domestic terrorists in Minneapolis here at home, while you're sending a strike force off the shores of Iran. And I'm not saying we shouldn't be doing that. I'm saying that the optics are, okay, why are we dealing with Iran in such a serious way when you seem to be, based on reporting, signaling some kind? And here's the thing that just blows my mind too. I mean, just think about this for a second. The Democrat Party at large, but obviously as exemplified in Minneapolis and Minnesota right now, is no different than these terrorist regimes abroad. Think about it. You've got Donald Trump trying to negotiate with Iran. You've got him out there fighting the left-wing globalists, in Davos. You've got him dealing with the Greenland issue, with Canada and them seeking to embrace China. And here in the United States of America, with other American citizens who are Democrats, you're having to go and effectively treat them the same way as our sworn enemies abroad? That's where we are in this country. And if people can't start to look at the left that way in the Democrat Party, I mean, you know, look, I think that we can't do what I think the left always does with Trump. They think he's stupid, and obviously he's not. They underestimate him, and that can be an advantage. But, you know, we can't pretend to put our heads in the sand and act like the Democrat Party is some sane party right now that shares anything in common with this country, with you and me, with the founding. They don't. And so you've got to strategically and mentally focus on them that way. These people are willing to use guerrilla warfare. I mean, when have you ever heard of any group or organization or Republican or MAGA engaged in some kind of elaborate operation like you're seeing unfold in Minneapolis? You know, what's happening in Minneapolis is an insurrection. And that's what they falsely tried to claim that J6 was. I mean, even in the worst fantasy that the left spun about that day, which was highly unorganized, obviously, because nothing was achieved. But even if you accept the fantasy of the left, it's not even a fraction of what you're seeing in Minneapolis with this type of organization, from the top down, from Democrat politicians going on TV. I want to play this last clip of James Talarco, who wants to be a big dog in the Democrat Party out of Texas. Listen to this.
ICE shot a mother in the face. ICE kidnapped a 5-year-old boy. ICE executed a man in broad daylight on our streets just this morning. It's time to tear down this secret police force and replace it with an agency that actually is going to focus on public safety. We need to impeach Kristi Noem. We need to prosecute agents who've abused their power. We have to haul these masked men before Congress so the world.
You hear how unhinged these people are? And again, I want to come back to it one more time. I could give James Talarco a list of 40 American citizens, all of whom are women, who have been raped and murdered by criminal illegals in this country. Why do these people not care at all when it comes to the Laken Rileys in this country? Why, I mean, how can they not have any response or sympathy or compassion whatsoever when illegals, due to their open border policies, are raping and killing women in this country? And there are countless episodes of that. And yet you've got 2 episodes of violence in Minneapolis, which would not have happened had these protesters sat their asses at home and let ICE do their jobs. I mean, it's nonsensical. It's nonsensical. So anyway, look, we're going to find out soon, you know, what Trump's plan is and what he's up to in Minneapolis. I do not believe for a second that he will cave on anything. Let me get into some comments here. David Howard says, Joe Rogan says ICE shooting distracting from Epstein files on purpose. You know, I love Joe Rogan. You know, that's one of the stupider things he said. Yeah, I mean, this is like a just such a weak clickbait. And I'm not attacking you, David, at all, brother. I'm really not. I do want to address this just as we close out the show. You know, we live in this world where, you know, now it's like if everything's a conspiracy, nothing's a conspiracy. I mean, it doesn't add up anymore. I mean, this type of reaction, though, oh, the ICE shootings are not everything's a distraction from the Epstein files on purpose. What are you talking about? I mean, think about this, David. I mean, what is Joe Rogan trying to suggest here? So you have Somali fraud that we know about to the tune of $9 billion plus. these leering centers, right? And this is one of the biggest scandals in American history. And it just is total. I mean, look, it's so devastating that Tim Walz announced he wasn't going to run for re-election as governor. That's how big a deal this is. And that's how you know that this is real. And it is real. The fraud is real. Now, the only question is, how involved were Democrat politicians in allowing this or supporting this to take place because they wanted the Somali community's votes? So you've got that going on. And now nobody's talking about that, right? All they're talking about is ICE is the face of evil. These ICE shootings aren't a distraction from the Epstein files. If anything, they're a distraction from the fraud in the state of Minnesota that needs to be dealt with. So Joe Rogan's line here that ICE shootings are a distraction, and also a distraction. Donald Trump is getting these people killed. I mean, who is Joe Rogan saying is Donald Trump trying to distract from the Epstein files? He's not the one that's organizing these protests. He's not the one who's training these lunatics like Renee Good and this latest one, Alex Preddy, to go out and get themselves killed. So it's a lazy line of thinking. And I know Joe Rogan's a smart guy. He's proven it many times, but I don't understand this. This is a trap. Do not fall into this, folks. Use your brain. There's no evidence. There's no logic that points to, oh, the ICE shooting is a distraction from the Epstein files. It just doesn't, it's not real. All right, folks, this is Drew Allen, your Millennial Minister of Truth. David, God bless you. I appreciate your feedback. Gummy Pokey, you're retarded, but keep listening. I will get through to you one day. I appreciate all of you, even the leftists that hate my guts. God bless you all. Until next time.